Hello viewers, welcome to the Bachelor course of Population Studies. In our last lecture, we discussed about sex ratio, its strengths, challenges and perspectives. Today, we will discuss another serious issue of sex ratio at birth and missing girls. Most of the South Asian economies are masculinizing themselves, and this is particularly true for the younger population. And India is no exception in this regard. It has a long tradition of preference for a son, which reflects in the adverse sex ratio at birth as well as for adults. A primary reason for son preference in India is associated with supposed economic utility of having sons. The male offsprings are not only supposed to have higher income earning capacity, they are also considered to be the persons who supplement the family income. Under the conditions of near absence of old age security and other social protection programs, it is expected that sons take care of parents during their old age and illness. On the other hand, the girls are considered to be a burden to the family, as huge amounts would have to be spent on their marriages, and whatever would be spent upon their upbringing would actually benefit the family where the girls would be married. Moreover, in a patrilineal societies like India, only sons can continue the family lineage and inherit family wealth. Furthermore, the utility derived from religious rituals that can be performed only by a son for parents in the event of death also shows the preference for a son. Thus, the cultural factors interwoven with the economic reasons generally lead to unnatural methods of sex selection, which results in adverse sex ratio at birth. The biological norm is for about 105 boys to be born for every 100 girls, more or less everywhere in the world. But given the greater survival rates of the females in the developed countries, it can also be less than 100. For example, in UK, the ratio is 98, in the US, this is 97, and in the EU, taken as a whole, this is 92. In the sub-Saharan Africa, where the life expectancy at birth for both males and females is quite low, the ratio is 99. In contrast to it, in India, where the sex ratio at birth is not actually calculated, but we have a proxy to it in terms of child sex ratio, that is the sex ratio of the age group 0 to 6 years, and it was found to be 109 male children per 100 female children during the census 2011. Present day sex ratio among children are going to have a lasting impact on population dynamics in Asia, some of which may have serious consequences and therefore must be controlled well in time. In this context, it is important to understand the causes and magnitude of this problem. The sex ratio at birth is defined as the number of male babies born to every 100 female births. The discussion so far shows that the adverse sex ratio at birth is not a natural phenomena, but a conscious choice. Cross-country experiences tell that the selection of the sex at birth is actually determined by the ability, the readiness and the compulsion of the families. The ability shows the access to technology, the readiness shows the utility driven from choice of sex of the babies, while the compulsion is to have a desired sex of the babies under the conditions of low fertility. Keeping these factors in mind, it can be stated that the recent dramatic increase in sex ratio at birth is a result of convergence of these three factors. These factors can be seen in this figure. These factors are persistent son preference, decreasing ideal family size, and the rapid spread of prenatal sex determination technology. Understanding the specific dynamics and nuisances of each factor is crucial to devising effective context-specific strategies to halt the expansion of prenatal sex selection. As we have already discussed, the son preference, the oldest and most deeply rooted of the three factors, may be motivated by economic, social and or the religious factors. The trends of low fertility in the families also force them to select the sex of the child, as with fewer births in the family, the chances to have a son are also lowered, and since having a son is a cultural norm, people tend to have a baby of their own choice. The empirical evidences from various countries suggest that the fertility rates and the probability of having a son declines under absence of sex selection, while if the sex selection at birth is permitted, the low fertility rates are associated with more of the male births per 100 of the female births, leading to adverse sex ratio at birth. All this would not have been possible without the access to sex determining and sex selecting technology. Ultrasound, a common method which was originally meant for improving the quality of prenatal care for millions of women, has also brought the risk of increased use of sex selection. It has become cheaper and more widely available to the middle class and even the lower class families, and in rural as well as urban areas. Until it was not legally banned in India, one must have come across very strange advertisements such as invest rupees 500 now and save your precious rupees 50,000 later, reminding the parents of the future expenses a daughter would bring. This also indicates how the market exploits the socio-economic values of a society and how the technology, which is actually meant for betterment of the society, can be used in just opposite direction with long-lasting harmful effects. With these factors in mind, let us examine the extent of this problem in India. In Indian census, we actually do not calculate the sex ratio at birth. Rather, the sex ratio of different age groups is calculated. Therefore, the sex ratio of the age group 0 to 6 years is taken as a good proxy of the variable sex ratio at birth. Before discussing about the sex ratio for the age group 0 to 6 years, let us see the size and sex composition of child population in India. This can be observed from table 1. The table shows that the total number of children aged 0 to 6 years in India during the census 2011 was 164.5 million as compared to 163.8 million in 2001. This means an increase of about 660,000 more children in the country, but the male-female decomposition of the child population shows that the size of female population in the age group 0 to 6 years has actually declined slightly, while that of the males increased. In percentage terms, we can observe a decline of 0.1% in female children as compared to the 0.8% rise in number of male children in the age group 0 to 6 years between the period 2001 and 2011. This points towards the trends of missing daughters in the country, where the population of male children is increasing while that of the female children is declining. These changes in size of male and female population in the age group 0 to 6 years indicate that the sex ratio of this age group must have changed. The Census of India defines a child sex ratio as the sex ratio of the age group 0 to 6 years and calculates it as the number of females per thousand of the males. The sex ratio of the child population in India is shown in this table. The table shows that the child sex ratio in India has declined while the country is patting itself for a rise in overall sex ratio from 933 in 2001 to 943 in 2011. The child sex ratio has declined from 927 in 2001 to 919 in 2011. This means a decline of 8 female children per thousand of male children. This decline is greater in rural areas as compared to the urban areas. In the urban areas, the sex ratio declined by merely 1 point from 906 to 905, while in rural areas it declined by 11 points from 934 to 923. Similarly, we can also find some regional differences in sex ratio of the country. These differences can be observed from this table. The table shows the child sex ratio in top 5 and bottom 5 states of the country ranked according to the child sex ratio. The table shows that the highest sex ratio is observed in Chhattisgarh, while the lowest one is in Haryana. These are respectively 969 and 834. Ironically, the state with lowest sex ratio, that is Haryana, is the state ranked among the states with highest per capita income, while Chhattisgarh with highest sex ratio lies in the category of states with very low per capita income. This points towards the fact that how economic growth has adversely affected the sex ratio. Actually, the economic prosperity of a region favors the ability to assess the modern technology for sex selection of the children. In contrast to it, among the less prosperous, poorer and illiterate segments of the population, excess female child mortality tends to be somewhat greater as compared to their wealthier counterparts. Nevertheless, they are complementary to the trend of female disadvantage when both prenatal and postnatal female discrimination are continuing to the overall daughter deficit in the country. The adverse sex ratio in the age group 0 to 6 years not only brings about the recent changes in the attitude of our society towards a girl child, but is also an indicator of the likely future trends of sex ratio in the population. Since any imbalance brings chaos to the society, this imbalance in the girls and boys will also have many ill consequences. Let us discuss about the implications of adverse sex ratio at birth or that of the missing girls. The selection of sex by the families may be seemingly adding to their utility in the current context, but the future of the same for the woman, the girl children, even the males and the society as a whole is a grim one. As we have already discussed in the last lecture, that the missing girls today will mean missing brides in the future. This is not merely a case of missing brides for the prospective grooms, but is more of a human right to live for the girls who face prenatal as well as the postnatal discrimination. The preference for son exerts a huge pressure on the woman to give birth to a baby boy only. Giving birth to a female child not only lowers their status in the family, but also has debilitating effects on the mental and physical health of the woman. It is against the backdrop of this intense pressure from family members that broader social norms that women seek to discover the sex of a fetus, and many a times they may be forced by their family or community to have an abortion if they are carrying a female fetus. In situations where abortion is restricted for sex selection purposes, terminating a pregnancy for this reason is likely to involve an unsafe procedure carrying very high risks. Amidst many other consequences, these tendencies lower the voice of women in their reproductive decisions, and any deviations from the directions given by the male dominant society only leads to violence, abandonment, divorce, or even sometimes death of the deviating woman. If they do not deviate, they have to go on bearing the child and aborting it until a son is born, and this process bleeds life out of these women. Isn't it a violation of human rights? This attitude of the society has serious implications for surviving and unwanted girl children. The biases in their upbringing which leads to low nutritional status of the girl children. A recent analysis of surveys in India found that rural girls with 2 or more older sisters had a significantly higher risk of severe stunting than other children. This has long-term impacts on the health of the girls. Finally, any imbalance in the male to female ratio leading to female deficit may lead to many social problems such as trafficking of girl children, prostitution, and prevalence of other abnormal sexual behaviors. Keeping all these in mind, a deeper examination of this problem and the solution thereof is the crying need of the time. Let us come to the conclusion of this lecture and discuss about a few policy implications. In the discussion so far, we have come to the conclusion that the sex ratio at birth has been very low in India, and behind all the determinants of adverse sex ratio, the preference for son in the family that rules the roost. Though there are many socio-cultural arguments showing a preference for son and elimination of the daughters, but the same process may also lead to many serious socio-economic problems. There is no one-shot solution to this gigantic, deep-rooted problem of the society. Law alone cannot move the cultural waves. Rather, the sociologists, they warn that regulating the social norms with strict laws rather boomerangs and do more harm to the society than the good. The short-term solutions often focus upon preventing prenatal sex selection through the regulation of the technology, but the experience has shown that it is unlikely to be effective in the long run. The research across all the developing economies has indicated that the most effective strategies should be multifaceted and take into account the specific drivers and expressions of the son preference. The efforts to control the adverse sex ratio at birth should include comprehensive long-term advocacy and activism to transform underlying discriminatory gender norms. In this direction, the Population Reference Bureau has given the following suggestions. The first suggestion is the need to strengthen the data sources. It says that for effectively dealing with the problem, it is important to know about the magnitude and the nature of the problem, which requires loads of information for diverse regions, social groups, religions, etc. This requires strengthening the institutional machinery meant for collection and dissemination of data. Accessible and reliable data on sex ratios at birth and related indicators are critical for identifying and addressing the practice of sex selection and can contribute to increased public and government awareness of the practice severity. The second suggestion is regarding promoting appropriate use of medical technology. Policymakers should focus on promoting responsible use of ultrasound and other technologies through educating and partnering with the medical community, rather than merely seeking to restrict its access. The third suggestion is regarding promoting gender equality. It is suggested that in order to promote the gender equity, the policymakers should introduce or revise laws to guarantee women's inheritance and ownership rights, improve marriage and divorce laws to ensure greater protection. I hope you would have enjoyed this lecture.